Check, check. Whoops. Check, check. Got to turn me down a little.
You all checked in? Good to see you, Tom.
Good to see you.
I
Hey,
still haven't taken you out for lunch yet.
I'm given my owner.
Check, check. All right, everybody, we're going to get started in 1 minute. Grab a chair. You can come up after he's done. It's fine. It's going to be about 15 minutes. Where's Dave? Dave. Dave. You want it? Okay. Oh, no, it was more of trying to get his attention, but he's just clueless. I mean, he was looking straight at me, too. I need a watch. All right, here we go. Let me make sure that everybody online is appropriately taken care of. All right, Dave, Eby. Is there anyone outside? Thank you, Dan. He's the only one brave enough to sit up here right now. I said you could. You didn't have to. All right, we're going to get started, everybody. If you don't have a seat, there's plenty of seats. Unless you're social distancing, then you can stay in the back. Are you waiting for one more? You waiting for something? Do you need to make an announcement? All right. For those that are new, anyone first time here? First time to a meeting? First time to, yay, welcome. Hopefully the food was satisfactory. My name's Shane Terpstra. I'm the Director of Safety for the club. This is Dave Eby, who may or may not say something here in a few minutes. So this is tonight's meeting is all about the owners. Just a couple just general items. I'm going to talk just a little bit about a few incidents, accidents, and just kind of what we do especially for the new folks. So these meetings are open to anybody. They're every other month, third Thursday of every other month, and mostly they're here, and it's either this room or the one that's just down the hall. Always starts with food outside, and then we come in here and have a meeting. So we try to keep things different. We have presentations from controllers a lot of times. Usually the first meeting of the year is a panel of all the controllers of all the towers and SoCal TRACON. That's usually pretty well attended. And then for those that are online, if you haven't seen any of the emails yet, or I'm sorry, if you haven't read any of the emails lately, all of these meetings are online. So if you can't make it in person, you can always go and watch them live, and then you can even watch them afterwards. So anyway, with that, so tonight's meeting is going to be six owners, and I think everybody's, yep, there you are. 6 owners are going to go through and just kind of talk about their airplanes, what it's like to have an airplane in the club. Mr. Tom Reed, who's had his Cirrus in the club for 20-some years, he's our owner ambassador, so he usually fields a lot of the initial inquiries. Typically, and he was just telling me earlier, he gets about one per day, almost one per day. Okay, so yeah, a few a week, and once everybody sees all the information he presents, nobody wants to put an airplane in the club. So he'll go through that with you, and he'll talk about some of this stuff. But just to kind of go through some of the accidents or incidents that we've had. A bunch of new ones have been posted. So to get to all of these, you can just go under safety accident reports. You do have to be signed in to be able to see those. You will have access to all of the incidents that have their the process completed. So the entire investigation process is completed, which means we've gone through the initial phase of getting the reports, the damage estimates, going through the reinstatement meetings for the member and or instructors, et cetera. And then whatever the outcome is gets posted here. So one of the ones that got a lot of attention because a lot of them do because they closed down the runways. But this was a gear failure of Dave Gordon's beautiful Duchess there that doesn't look so beautiful in the picture. But you can I'm not going to go through this and read it. I think everybody can read it. But you get an idea of what you're looking at here. Just kind of a rundown of the incident, some details about it. There's photographs. This one specifically, the left main did not come down. One of the few mechanical issues we have. So you can read through that. That airplane is, it's hard with the Duchess because they didn't make that many of them. It's really hard to get parts, and trying to get stuff fabricated and ordered, and prices now are 30-40% more. It's really difficult. So this plane that just came online is going to be out for another several months. You can see a few others. So we had 3803, another Duchess. I think this is the last few months have been all about Duchess. This pilot got really lucky. He had a blown tire at Avalon, somehow managed to find a spare. And I've no clue how that happened, and changed it himself, and then flew back. So yeah, I give it to him for, you can read the report. I give it to him for ingenuity. We had another, so this one, just to point this one out, this is 106 Hotel Papa was damaged to an aileron that we found out about in March. If you can read through the report, I'll pull it up here. But the owner went out and found this, and what he found was there's the damage there. And let me get you a little bit better picture. It was pretty bad. It hit something. We did an initial, mostly Dave fielded this call initially. No one knew anything about it. The previous member didn't know anything about it. Nobody had any clue how this happened. Fast forward 3 months. 3 months later, I get a phone call out of the blue that wants to talk about this incident. Come to find out, the member indeed knew about what happened and caused the damage, but denied that it happened to anybody. Not really a good way to build any kind of trust. So we went through this whole process. Come to find out, they finally admitted to us that that they did in fact cause the damage after a lot of effort. It took way too much. It could have been a simple, hey, this is what happened. You know what? Mistakes happen. The IDP, for those that aren't familiar, the IDP, if you cause damage to an airplane, there's any number of things that might happen. If it's a small amount of damage, then typically what will happen is it'll go right through to the IDP committee. You may be assessed up to $2,500 total, according to the IDP. But most of the time, it's the low end is $750. Now, so that's that's probably what this person would have been assessed. Like, yeah. So the IDP, the insurance deductible plan, is a budgeted amount of money that goes into it's basically just out of the dues that are that's used for stuff like this. It's used for things that are excessive wear and tear. It's even used for some of the larger incidents that we don't want to send to insurance because we want to keep insurance down. As far as I know, we're probably the only club that does that. It's also the reason why we're able to continue to get insurance for 104 airplanes every single year and keep those rates relatively low. All the rates have gone up lately, but So that amount of money, hang on just a second. So that amount of money is, it just sits there, and hopefully we don't have a lot of incidents, but there's always something. And it's always a fine balance. Do we send, an incident to IDP, or do we send it to insurance? Certainly if there's injuries, that kind of thing, it just almost always goes to insurance. If there are larger things going on, then it'll go into insurance. So the other one that I'll talk about here in just a second, that one definitely went to insurance because it was almost a total. So it's something that Dave works on with the president to make a determination on what they decide to send to insurance or not. So by and large, the claims that we get are excessive wear and tear that are paid for out of this budgeted amount of money. Okay, so there was another question there. Yeah. The cause of this one, yeah, so good question. This was backed into a fuel truck. It was actually pushed into a fuel truck, technically. Yeah, and again, simple, hey, you know what, I screwed up. This is what happened, fine. We put the stuff in, we make we go through the IDP, the owner gets made whole, we get the airplane fixed, the member is charged probably $750, and he's flying pretty quick. And sure, if he says he's sorry. This was discovered 2 days after the person got back from a trip, and it hadn't flown, it hadn't even moved. The owner found it. And the owner found it like this. So the renter caused this after he rented it? Correct. Yeah, when he was pushing it back from the end of his trip. Yeah. What's that?
No, we couldn't find a scout.
No. It never hurts the fuel truck. I mean, you can look at all kinds of incidents. The fuel trucks are... no. Yeah, stuff like that, there's kind of zero tolerance for. I mean, yeah, what else are you lying about? No. Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. But I mean, all the time. Every single day we deal with this stuff. And it's rarely an issue. And sometimes, depending on what the issue is, it might not even go through IDP. It might not even, I mean, sometimes the IDP committee just says, yeah, fine, whatever, we'll take care of it. So, just depends, yeah. This one was bad. This one, I'm going to bring this one up. So, this was the pirate ship, as it is affectionately referred to. The student pilot went out took a flight out to Redlands with no solo endorsement. And they basically were able to circumvent all the checks and balances. I mean, not only, they talked to their instructor, and the instructor was in the airplane, was instructing someone else at the time, and said, look, I can't talk about this right now. The person decided to go anyway. So they circumvented the system, the schedule master, and he had no solo endorsement in schedule master, so he attached his instructor's name so that he could actually reserve the airplane. Took this airplane out. My understanding is when he came in from the guy who actually is the person that's working on it, he was in a helicopter doing a lesson apparently and saw this whole thing come down, literally come down. He said it was a controlled crash. I mean, the way it came down, it hit so hard. He did go around. I mean, I give it to him for going around. So he went around, and the guy in the helicopter, the mechanic, came in and said, you got to get that thing on the ground because you hit hard. So he did. He landed. You can see the prop in this picture, but the firewall was bent in like 3 places. Was it more than 3? Well, 3 is always a good number, but so yeah, it hit hard. Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. Forgot about that. So I think this is sitting at what? 60? No. What's our damage estimate right now? It's yeah, it's 70 right now. So yeah, $80,000 for this guy. This is one of those where the insurance company has to determine whether or not they're going to total it, depending on the value of the policy, or have it replaced, or have it repaired. This one's being repaired.
The math is different. Basically, they base it on the hull value that they can get for it. They total it.
Yeah, and I think 80% or something is what they use.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Well, they try to make it to where we don't take a big hit.
Does something like this result in a lot of
But-
legal action against?
Hang on a sec. First of all, that's kind of up to the insurance company at this point. I mean, it is and it isn't, and whether or not they want to deal with that or it's legal action.
No, they can't. Subrogation?
Yeah, but
We have no subrogation clause in the policy.
we do have a no subrogation, which says that we can't go back and sue the person. I mean, this I think probably would have a case, but it's up to that's not something that's something you can talk to him about that. But so at any rate, come to find out, allegedly the student was also taking some package or something out for business as well for his employer. So just to add fuel to the fire. This was a huge deal. It's still going on. The FAA is investigating. It's all kinds of messed up. So it's certainly interesting. It's worth a read anyway. There was another question somewhere.
You guys ever go to FSDO or something like this?
It depends on the situation. I mean, this was pretty egregious.
Most
So.
of the time they come to us.
A lot of times, well, there's some of those guys are club members or former club members. They know about it. I mean, they know about all the stuff that happens around here, right?
Well, it also goes down to like, usually anything from the support of takeoff. Before a takeoff, tower calls that provides support with this. So if it's club planes, normally within a couple of weeks, I get an email that says, give me the pilot information and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, FSDO, they're involved. They got nothing better to do. The last one that I'll point out, hopefully this will be available. Maybe Tom will talk about it too. I know it's like salt in the wound, but that's the third prop strike for 756 Romeo Alpha. So we got the trifecta. That airplane is, I think it's been down more than it's been up.
200 days.
Yeah, yeah. So
Landing or takeoff? Landing.
landing, it's always landing. That one is a 30. Is it 40? Oh, it's 40?
What year is it? 79.
There you go. The flaps weren't flaps weren't really the issue. Yeah. So anyway, interesting reading. If you're ever bored, you want to see what's going on. Kind of gives you a rundown of all of those. And they, like I said, as I complete these things, we post all of those.
03 Echo one, the classic. That was fun.
Which one?
The guy that.
The one down here at the.
Underneath the.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That one's a great story.
Yeah. Actually, that is worth mentioning. So there was basically, the wind was light and variable at Catalina at the time. They made the decision to land on runway 4. Runway 4 is downhill, and apparently it was a hard landing according to the pilot. Most pilots actually will never admit that they have a hard landing, so that's a whole different story. But yeah, he said it was a hard landing. The tire, he felt the tire do something weird, kept it on the runway, but saw that it blew it. And I think I might actually have a picture, but it not only did it blow the tire, man, there's a insane hole inside this.
The story of getting it home is what was amazing.
So he needed a new wheel.
I don't have it.
Yeah, and that's what?
Eventually,
The Catalina. And how they jacked it up.
well, they had a tire in a tube.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a tire. I have no idea how they jacked
the
it.
whole wheel, because they couldn't use that rim, it was shot. They had a whole 6
Are you sure about that?
Positive,
Yeah, I don't.
because Fred had to get it back. I go,
Yeah.
leave it here. He goes, no, I gotta return the rim, it's not mine. Yeah, that thing was usable. That thing's destroyed.
Yeah, it was actually both sides ended up getting damaged.
Yeah. Fred's like, I gotta get this thing back to Catalina. I'm like, who had
So.
parts in Catalina with a jack?
I think a lot of people have those tires in there.
Dumb luck.
Yeah, both tires go off the runway. Land uphill. That's the end result. Always land uphill if you can. I would even, me personally, I'd land uphill with a small tailwind any day of the week.
There's an Aerostar over there on its nose. Apparently the nose gear flapped.
Yeah.
So it's sitting over there, prop tracking the whole 9 yards.
Any other questions for me before we start on the owner panel? Good. Tom Reed is our owner ambassador. He's going to give you a rundown on club aircraft ownership. Really good presentation. And with that, here you go.
Am I on? Can you guys hear me? So on Friday, I threw my back out playing volleyball. So if you hear me wince out loud in pain, it's because of that, not because I own an airplane. So You're thinking about buying an airplane and leasing it to Plus One. Crazy? Have you heard these stories from Shane? So the best thing that anybody ever said about aircraft ownership is that it's fiscal insanity. So once you get over that, then you can talk details, but it is not an investment. If you want an investment, get a Vanguard fund and don't look back. But you buy an airplane because you love airplanes. Because, oh, that's a picture of what it's like to own an aircraft right there. And of course, there's all the aviation jokes. You've heard them before. One of my favorites is the grizzled flight instructor. He says, "Son, what makes this airplane fly?" And the student says, "Sir, lift over drag." And the instructor says, "No, son, money, and lots of it." So, yeah, how do you make a little money in aviation? Start with a lot. So if you're not passionate about aviation, if you don't like airplanes, if you don't like the people that like airplanes, then don't do this. The reason you do this is because you really like airplanes, and you like being around airports, and you like being around airports. And it can be a good tax write-off too. And if you accidentally make money, that's a little miracle. So it can help you afford an airplane that you wouldn't normally afford. So 20 years ago, there's no way I could have written a check for $350,000 for my Cirrus, bought a hangar, put it in there, and then flown it on the weekends all by myself. My partner at the time, Eric Sanderman, who's also a CPA, he now happens to be the Northeast Regional Director for Cirrus. He convinced me that buying a Cirrus and putting it in the club would make sense. And you know, it kind of has. And it enabled me to own an airplane I never would be able to afford otherwise. And it gave me a good tax write-off. And one of the bottom line there is that I know who's maintaining the airplane. So when you jump in a rental airplane, you know, you don't really know who's maintaining the airplane unless you get intimate with the owner and you call that owner up and talk to him about what's been going on. And I try to be super transparent. If you're on my list, you know that I talk about everything that gets done to the airplane. I send out the invoices so you can see what parts we bought and what we had done. If something happens in the airplane, I want everybody to know, like last guy to fly, he had a little CHT warning. It went away. We don't know why. Yeah, we're not going to ground the airplane over it. It might be just a probe. But, you know, everybody should know about that. So the disadvantages is that planes are going to get a lot more wear and tear than if you flew it yourself. So, you know, if you fly 2 hours a month and the airplane's flying 50 hours a month in the club, you're going to have, what's that, 20x times the wear and tear. And renters aren't going to treat it like you would treat it. So, and bottom line here is very close to my heart because my 182 RG has been down since January 21st. Those are catastrophic financial problems to an owner. If your airplane goes down and you can't get it back, and it's like having a rental property with no renter in it. And so you got to brace for that. You got to budget for it. And you know that, like, that's my favorite airplane. I love flying that airplane. I haven't been able to fly it since January. So I've owned my SR-22 for 20 years, and I have 20 years of financial records, so I think that's pretty good, broad-based numbers to look at. So over the last 10 years, I show a total profit, $14,297. So I flew 360 hours in that airplane over that 10-year period. So in theory, I flew for free, and I put $14K in the bank. And all it cost me was the $330,000 to buy the airplane. That's pretty cool, right? Okay, there's this thing called TBO. So I had to buy an engine this year. $110,000 by the time that finished. So now my net income year to date for the last 10 years is negative $93,000. So in actuality, the last 10 years, it cost me $93,000 to fly that 360 hours. But that's $250 an hour to fly, and my airplane rents for almost $400 an hour. So I'm subsidizing my flying by $150 an hour. I still think that's a pretty good deal. And I got a great write-off while I depreciated the airplane. You guys want to do questions while we do this? Or? What's that?
How many repacks? That's 2 repacks.
I got one coming up, that's 15K, I didn't even include that.
You may be getting into this, but if you listed your Cirrus on Barnstormers tomorrow, how much would you sell for it?
That's a good question. I think my Cirrus is back up to about the price I paid for it. For a while, it was down to like lower than 200K. So I paid 330, went down to 190 something. Now it's probably back up to 3.5. Yes, sir.
Do you do like a maintenance, like a maintenance fund per hour that you have in a separate?
Oh yeah, and we're gonna get to that. Let's keep rolling through this.
I have a quick question. The 14,000 profit, does that include that you covered your payments, monthly payments on it? Or can you-
Yes, it did. So I was paying interest on a loan for 15 years of those 20 years. And now I have a free and clear Cirrus, which is another benefit too. So if you look at the numbers, you can see good years, bad years, good years, bad years. 2015 was a tough year. I think I had to put an engine in 2015. But 2021, we're at 10,700 and the airplane's paid for, and I'm actually learning how to price the airplane properly. It's taken me 20 years to learn you have to charge more for the airplanes. The one mistake the owners make in this club, they don't charge enough. You guys are getting the best deal on the planet because nobody's charging enough for their airplane, including me. So airplanes have two kinds of costs. There's fixed costs and there's operating costs. Fixed costs are what you pay whether the airplane's sitting on the ground or not. So I'm on my airplane that's sitting on the ground in Oakland, I'm paying for the hangar, I'm paying for the insurance, I'm paying for the GPS subscriptions, I'm paying for all these things, whether it flies or not. So if you pay $5,000 a year for your hangar and you fly 1 hour, your hourly cost for that hangar is $5,000, right? So the operating costs are the costs that happen when you start the engine. You have gasoline, you have oil, you have maintenance, you have engine reserve. People forget about that. You're going to need a new engine every 2,000 hours. So there's a complicated balancing act of charging enough for the airplane so that you pay your fixed costs and you pay your operating costs. So if your airplane flies 1 hour a month, that's not enough. If your airplane flies 100 hours a month, that's probably way too much. And the different airplanes in the club fly different hours. The high performance airplanes fly between 15 and 25 hours a month. And the trainers, Dave can attest, you cross 100 hours sometimes, don't you?
The highest I hit was 140 hours in 1 month.
140 hours in 1 month. And that's insane. So, you have to do a 100-hour inspection every 2 weeks. A 100-hour inspection is basically an annual. So he's doing an annual every 2 weeks. And the fuel costs on that, you think, man, he's making a ton of money. Wait until you get the fuel bill.
Before we confuse people, you don't have to do 100-hour inspection.
Yeah, so
Yeah, you don't have to,
full
but
disclosure on mine, I do the 100 hours, not every 200 hours, and then it's in between.
that's a good point. So if you didn't hear what he said you don't have to do a 100-hour inspection on a club airplane because we're Part 91. And I don't do 100 hours on my Cirrus because I do 50 hours, which we do the oil change and we do a pretty thorough safety inspection at the time, and so we keep up with it. So the more you fly, the less the fixed costs come out in an hourly rate, right? So fly more. So let's take a dive into this. I built a spreadsheet. I've kind of modified it year after year after year. You guys can get this spreadsheet off the web, and it tells us, let's go back to this. Whoops. It tells us how you can figure out how much to charge for your airplane. Can I get some help here, Shane? You're going to put up Excel for us.
So while he's doing that, have you looked at this kind of spreadsheet over a number of different aircraft, a number of different owners, or just yours?
I've done it for this one. I did it for a 172, and I have it for my 182 RG. So, and it's pretty easy to adapt for any airplane. So, all righty. That's a 172. Let's do the Cirrus because I'm a little more familiar with that one. So the things that you forget about are consumables like brakes, things things that wear out, tires, batteries, a prop overhaul. You got to overhaul your prop every 2,000 hours. So there's a lot of numbers to look at here, but I just want to point out a few things. Here is the hourly rate. I'm estimating that my airplane's flying 20 hours a month. All these figures here slice and dice the engine reserve, the hourly costs, the monthly costs, and you can see that if you plug all these in, and I'm charging $396 an hour and it flies 20 hours a month, keep rolling all the way down here, you can see that I'm making $1,200 a month if I've done everything right and no surprises happen. Let's go ahead and go back up to the top, and this is a cool table that a really smart guy helped me with. So here's $396 an hour, and you can see as it rolls across like this, this is 1 hour. So if my airplane flies 1 hour, I'm losing $3,000 a month. If my airplane flies 10 hours, I'm just about break even, maybe $1,000 a month. It starts to get into the green here as it goes to 20, 25, and then I'm actually up to a pretty good profit over here at 40. But in reality, my airplane flies somewhere in here. So I try to price it so that people will fly my airplane and can afford it, and I don't go bankrupt. My motto is, you rent my airplane to subsidize my flying, not so I subsidize your flying. So some of the surprises in here are, you forget battery, tires, and TKS fluid, for me, the anti-icing, brakes, prop overhaul. So there's $13 an hour just for the consumables. Let's roll down here to, so we've got insurance, hangar, subscriptions, property tax. You forget about that. The county gets their piece of the pie. And then parachute pack reserve. So I've got total monthly fixed costs of $2,500. If I don't fly that airplane, that's still $2,500. And then my hourly operating costs, I've got my fuel per gallon. That's the cost of that. It burns that much. You can see it comes down here like this. You have the engine reserve. I have to put $40 an hour in engine reserve. So the wet cost, this the operating without the fix, are $298 an hour. So Shane, see that $650? Change that to $850. Let's say fuel goes up $2 a gallon, which it did recently. Let's scroll down and look at this red. Look at how I'm in the red. I'm really in the red now. I mean, that really changed the operating costs. That's, at $2 an hour times $18 an hour, that really adds up. So I'm happy to send this spreadsheet to you, or you can get it off the Plus One website and call me up. We'll go through it if you're interested in learning more about that. But do you want to look at a 172? Yes. Okay, it's basically the same thing with about half the cost. Yes, sir.
You have to do an accelerated depreciation with the club ownership versus
Depends on the tax laws at the time. So when I bought my airplane, I was able to do an accelerated depreciation, and I went home and I said, honey, we've had a pretty good year in the mortgage business, so I'm going to have to write a big check to the IRS. If I write that same check to Cirrus, I get an airplane. So that was my motivation. Yes, sir.
So does this spreadsheet include the cost of the airplane, the monthly loan payment?
Well, you can. It's right here. There's a calculator in here for your loan payment. Let's do that. Let's throw that in here. Is this the one? Okay, so what's a 180? What's a 172 cost these days? 140.
Once you get it all done at 140.
So let's say you're going to put 40 grand down and finance 100, right? Or what are you going to put down? Half? Let's put down half. So you have a $70,000 loan amount right there. Yeah. And there you go. Now you have a $482 addition to your so, and you can see this one is priced at 144, and you can see that at 50 hours he's making $300 a month. So, I mean, that's a lot of capital laid out for a little return. So there has to be other reasons for you to do this, like you really love airplanes, and you want to fly the airplane that you put into the club. If you don't want to fly the airplane you put into the club, don't do it. Yes, sir.
I only say this just to ask my question. I sell aircraft helmets that are built out of composites, and the manufacturer says that the composite materials, the helmets, are only good for 12 years. Cirrus is made out of composite. Is there some type of lifespan for the airframe?
they were worried about that, and they wouldn't let them paint it any color but white at first. Now that there's 20 years, they're great. You know the old.
Do they have like a estimated
No,
span of a?
there's no lifespan.
Maximum airframe hours on Cirrus?
Isn't it
I'm sure
12,000
that's
hours?
okay. Unless it got rescinded. Or has been.
I am not aware of it, and I don't want to know it if there is one. La 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 la. So I think they keep pushing it back, though. I mean, because there's Cirruses that are in trainers that have 10+ thousand hours on them. So these are the same numbers for a 172. You can see they're a lot lower. The insurance is a lot lower. The annual costs are a lot lower. The engine replacement costs. It's just really rent for less money. And here's a kind of cool little table. This is the appreciation and depreciation. So if you're going to depreciate this, this is a $175,000 airplane. You depreciate it over 7 years. You get to take $25,000 a year off your W-2 earnings. So that helps. That saves you money. Your taxable income on this is a negative number when you're really at break even. So the dark side of taking that accelerated depreciation is when you sell the airplane, you have to recapture it. Is that what you were going to say? Yeah. Yeah. I think you can 1031. I'm not a tax guy, though. I would try it and see if the IRS objects to it. Yes, sir.
This is based on 36 hours a year that you fly your own Cirrus?
My own Cirrus? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yes.
How many hours do I fly the Cirrus a year?
Yeah, I think the previous slide showed 36.
I flew it 360 hours in 10 years. Yeah, so I was flying at about 36. I bought a couple other airplanes. So I bought a Piper Cub and I bought a Stearman, and so I started flying those a lot more, and then the Cirrus a lot less, and so then I'm flying the Cirrus a lot more. So it goes around. Any other questions before we move on?
I just looked it up. 12,000 hours. It's a Part 23 airplane.
Yeah.
And so everything is life limited under Part 23, 12,000 hours. That's
Great.
approximately 60 years.
Good. Okay. There we go. Any other questions about the spreadsheet before we move on? Yes, sir.
Captured at the original purchase price or the resale value?
So if I bought mine for $330 and I depreciated the whole thing down to zero, I have a zero basis in it, and I sell it for, pick a number, $330, I'm paying taxes on capital gains on $330. So it's whatever I sell it for, yeah. So that's why I haven't sold my Cirrus. So, yes, sir.
Got a calculator very similar to this. The hardest thing I've been trying to figure out is some of those consumables and reserves that you're setting aside. So like, how did you know what your engine is going to cost you in today's dollars?
Okay, yeah,
Started
so
figuring it out and
I thought, that's, okay, his question is, how do I know what the engine's going to cost in today's dollars? I didn't. The last engine I bought for the Cirrus was $55,000. So imagine my surprise when I got the invoice when I said to Victor Aviation in Palo Alto, where I get my engines done. I said, Victor, I want to buy another engine. Send me the estimate. $77,000. But I had an engine reserve, and I just had to add to it. So, okay.
So I mean, doing your research though, like, just go find a mechanic and just start asking them, like, how much does this part cost? How much does that part cost?
So if the question is, if you're trying to estimate for a new engine or for, this is where talking to other owners really helped me too. I mean, Dave Gordon was a huge resource for me. Gus Schwartz, I don't know if he's in the room. He was a huge resource for me when we started. They'd say, hey, buy your oil here, or buy your tires from Desser Tires. You can get retreads for half the cost, And you can, believe me, you can pay a lot more for things by not knowing where to buy them. Okay, so how do I get paid? So you guys fly my airplane. You go into Schedule Master, you put your credit card number in, the money goes into +1. At the end of the month, they close the month out, and by about the 15th of the month, then I get a statement that says the plane was flown this much, and the fuel receipts get taken out of that, and then I get a what I consider a net check, but it's really the gross check, because out of that, then I have to pay for all the other expenses. As an owner, you maintain your airplane, you're totally responsible for the airplane, you buy the gas, you set up everything. So all the club really does is introduce you, the flying members, to the airplane, and they collect money for me. The club does provide insurance, and the insurance is about 3 times. It's out of the club. I'd pay, I think I'm paying about $12,000 a year through the club right now, and I'd probably pay about 4 or 5 as a 20-year-old Cirrus. So, but it's very good insurance. The insurance does cover just about everything. Yeah, the owner pays the insurance, the club insures it. So, and we have a new charge now, which you guys are paying when you rent the airplane. It's called the IDP charge. Isn't it 1% of what you pay? And that's helping to fund the IDP account, because we've had all these expensive accidents. So here's what a sample statement looks like. You can see here, my Hobbs start is here, my Hobbs end is here. We flew 23 hours. That was 1.6 of my hours at 0 cost. And you can set the owner rate at any cost you want. So if you have partners, you say, hey, we're not going to do this at 0. We're going to do it at $100 an hour, or whatever you want to make it. An owner can set their own rate. So this is the rate that it was being charged back then before gas prices went up. This is an older statement. So I got $7,300. There's my insurance cost. I got $7,600 minus this, so I got a gross check of $6,600 that month. And then I had to pay for all those other things. So you get that check and you go, woohoo! And then you get the bill and you go, oh man. So, okay. What's the best airplane to put in +1? It's the airplane you're going to fly. Don't put an airplane in the club that you aren't going to want to fly yourself. So the basics are, a trainer will fly a lot more and probably be a little more profitable. A high-performance airplane will fly less and not be as profitable, but high-performance airplanes are more fun. And remember, if your airplane's flying 100 hours a month, that's a full-time job. You cannot be an absentee owner and put your airplane on the ramp and not show up. I'm at the airport Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and sometimes on the weekends. So, but I like it. I like being there. Tell me again why anybody wants to do this. Well, tax write-off, fun with airplanes, you get to subsidize your own flying. And if you manage this like a business and you price it correctly, then you can be profitable. And Brian, you really promote your business very well, right? And I think I do. And when you call me and say, hey, I want to fly your airplane, I want to meet you, I want to shake your hand, I want to look you in the eye, I want to say, don't break my airplane. And I want to give you an introduction to the hangar and make sure you know everything about it. I want you to know who I am so you can call me if anything's wrong. You're my client at this point, and I want to treat you very well, and I hope that you would treat my airplane well in return. So the owners that don't do this, that are absentee or that don't answer the phone, then they have problems. And most of those airplanes either leave the club or they don't fly very much. So things you can do to make your life easier and make us owners very happy. Call in your squawks right away. Make sure you don't just email or text, but you call, email, and text and stalk me until you get me and say, Tom, your airplane's broken. I want to know. Especially for the trainers or the airplanes where there's a lot of people flying them, call the owner. Introduce yourself. Say, hi, I'm Tom. I'm going to be flying your 172. What is it I need to know about that airplane? Get to know the owner. I want you to have a relationship with my airplane. I really do. I don't want you to just drop in, treat it like a Hertz rent-a-car, and put it away wet. I want you to say, I love this airplane. I want to know everything about it, and then you get the best value for your money when you go rent my airplane. So if you're going to take it to Oshkosh or for a long cross country, call the owner and say, hey, does it need an oil change? Do the oil change before I go. Is it going to go in for maintenance? Do not plan the most important trip of your life the day after it comes out of an annual. It might not come out of the annual. So, and there's all these things that are out of everybody's control, but that's one of those things where you just go, don't press it on big maintenance items. So, and if you do schedule it out for 2 weeks and you come back a day early, cancel the schedule. Or even if you come back a couple hours early, just cancel it so it opens it up for the next guy. The more efficient the rental is, the less we can charge for the airplane, right? If the airplane's being grounded, I have people that book my airplane from 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday until 6 o'clock on Sunday night, and I'm at the schedule going, wow, okay, that guy's going somewhere for the weekend, and then when Friday rolls around, he backs it down to like 2 hours. Yeah, I see red when that happens. Yes?
I'm not sure about this. If you sign up for an 8-hour reserve on the airplane, and you come back in 4 hours, how do you cancel and schedule match to make it available?
You just go right onto Schedule Master and it's I'm done, right, Shane? Yeah.
You can also just hit cancel, and it will cancel any part of the schedule that's not remaining.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you can go back later and put your hobs and tire times in.
Okay.
And if you have any confusion about that, call me and say, hey, I'm back, and I'll do it for you. But thank you for asking that. So, okay. There is a very thorough FAQ on the Plus One website. You go to About, and you go down to Becoming an Owner. And if you click on that, then you can put your name and email address in. It'll send you a automatic email that looks like it's coming from me. And it'll have the spreadsheets attached to it and some examples of all the stuff we've talked about. And then if you're interested in this, call me. My wife rolls her eyes because, oh, there's another guy calling to talk about airplanes. And I go up to my office and she knows I'm gone for a while. So that's my contact information. And you guys know how to find me on the Schedule Master if you need me. Any questions? Well, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. All right, you can keep that. Just
Okay.
in case, yeah, because I'll give the rest of them. All right, so we'll bring the, let's not stand under the speaker. I'll bring up all the owners here. We got Brian Jones. He's 455 whiskey, right? 4555 whiskey?
Yeah, it's the world's hardest town.
Yeah, it is pretty bad. Where's Miko? There he is. Miko, he's got a couple. He's got the 170, 1607 Delta, which for a second I thought that was your plane at Gillespie today. Similar tail number. And also 60 GL. Trent Cherry 5908 Sierra, the Debonair, and Denny Breslin 5291 Echo out of Gillespie. So I'm going to give them the mic, have them do just a quick intro, either about their airplane, about issues they've had, whatever. And then we're just going to get, maybe 5 minutes for each of the owners, and then we're going to open it up to anybody that wants to ask any questions. I think there's a microphone. Oh, sorry. Well, that's what happens when you sit there. And Dave Gordon, who usually doesn't need any introduction, so he owns a bunch of airplanes in the club. There's that. Let me. Hang on.
And the Redbird full motion simulator at Gillespie Field. Bought both of those when I retired from American. I was the director of aviation for San Diego Christian College. We bought those assets for the college program. When I retired from that, I brought it over to Plus One. So 91 Echo is a 1979 model N with a Pinyin 180 horsepower conversion. Also put some stuff in it since then, Garmin 430, the G5 PFD MFD combination, an angle of attack indicator, because in the college program we're using it for our spot landings for NIFA, and it's really nice to just not have to worry about an airspeed indicator when you're looking at the aiming point and you know you're on speed, you're going to be landing in the box. 91 Echoes at Gillespie Field. I've had it for about 4 years now in the program. It's got about 11,000 hours on the airframe, a new paint job 2 years ago, a new engine 2 years ago. Engine now has about 700 hours on it. part of the, people tell me it flies well. I don't fly it all that much because I, like Tom, have a 182 RG, a turbo, and it's not in the club, nor would I put it in the club for obvious reasons. It's a wonderful machine, but it's a personal machine. So this airplane flies between 45 and 55 hours a month. Maintenance, I'll talk about fuel first. $19,000 on fuel last year. This year so far, over $14,000. So I just ask guys, when you rent it and you head out, use AirNav or ForeFlight or check the fuel prices and make your stops at some place that has reasonable fuel prices. Sometimes there's a major difference in how much they cost. My number one issue with maintenance is flat spotted tires. Cost me $500 once. They blew not through the treads, but the inner tube and everything else. And it was up at Fallbrook. It was a pain to get it back. So I said, you know, there's no need. It's really bad pilot technique to jump on the bad idea. So you don't need to be doing that. People are generally pretty respectful. I get a lot of compliments on the airplane, and it really flies well. The one thing I would say is unscheduled maintenance. Tom talked about the cost of all these things. You try to get a little bit ahead because I want to put a 650 in to replace the 430. That's $11,000. Then you got to get ahead a little bit and plan ahead for those things, and also want to replace the lower instrument panel. But today, for example, it's in the shop for a broken flap bracket that was probably broken by too many people over speeding the flaps, putting them down, using them as a speed brake. So I just said, look, these are $100,000 machines that are 40 years old and quite a few flight hours on them. You know, they're rebuilt all the time. You got to treat them with a little bit of respect and care. The Redbird simulator is a fabulous training machine. And there's a rule here recently about IFR recency. So you can now certify your IFR by yourself without a CFII as long as you log it correctly. And there's a advisor circular that tells you how to do that. It's located at Gillespie Field. I do all the checkouts. I do that for standardization. I want to make sure everybody gets the entire checkout exactly the same way. And when I change things, I put the paperwork on the website, or I've got a list of all the owners or the people who are checked out and authorized, and I'll send that data out to them. For example, the georeferencing has been a Bad Elf GPS. There's a system that, so you're using ForeFlight or